growing up, I was taught through the media that gay people were this unknowable other, and that while they were certainly deserving of love and equality, that they somehow existed separately from me in my adolescent world. Although I couldn't be completely oblivious, of course. Growing up as a tomboy, I was often accused of being a lesbian by my peers. On one occasion, I wore a Gap sweatshirt to school, only to later find out that the students around me had decided that Gap stood for gay, and proud. And they teased me about it relentlessly. However, in my overconfident adolescent state, my only response was to ask them whether or not there was something wrong with being proud of your sexual identity. Turns out that wasn't the response they were looking for, but other than the occasional accusation towards my sexuality, I was never really exposed to gay people in my adolescence. This all changed, however, and this is where our story starts, as most interesting ones do, when I realized that I was gay. I'll spare you the cringeworthy details of my lesbian awakening, but after years of misinformation and fear, I was ready to throw myself full force into whatever the LGBTQ community had to offer. The problem was, I didn't know what that was. Up until my big gay awakening, which, by the way, was less of an awakening and more of a metaphorical stumble out of bed at 6 a.m., I had never really been subject to openly gay characters in the media. Or perhaps I had, but in my attempt to deny my identity, I thereby denied the existence of these characters. But I began to see them popping up everywhere. Characters like Ellen Page, Ellen DeGeneres, Tim Gunn, and turning to the fictional world, Kurt and Blaine from Glee. And bear in mind, I say characters because regardless of whether or not these people were individuals or playing a role, they were constructed by the media to be an ideal sense of what it means to be gay, and therefore, characters. Now, a lot of these characters, and one example comes to mind of Kurt and Blaine from Glee, which was a show that I watched a lot as a kid, is that the two characters were played as polar opposites, one being very out of the closet and one being very in the closet. And this kind of skewed my perception of what it meant to be gay. And it also made me realize that every character that I saw in the media that was gay was either one-dimensional, used mostly as comic relief or to fulfill a diversity quota. But these characters, and using these characters, I began to paint a picture of who I was supposed to be as a gay person. And according to what I saw, I was supposed to have a cool haircut, be either as far in or out of the closet as one could possibly be. And most importantly, and what I've come to talk to you about today, I was supposed to be a walking dictionary of terms for the heterosexual population. And I was so eager to feel this sense of belonging within my community that I was willing to do just that. I used to think that as a gay person, I had a social obligation to educate every queer person, every non-queer person, on every queer issue under the sun. I spent years learning term after term and being the rainbow elephant in the room at family dinner parties. And now I can say that after 4 years of cramming my brain with the most gay knowledge that I can find, that I know even less about myself than I did 4 years ago. Which makes sense, really. You can learn every single term in the English dictionary, every word, and still lack the comprehension about how any of it fits together to form such beautiful narratives that we see in our literature. And this made me realize that who I was supposed to trying to be as a gay person, and who I thought I had to be, someone who rejected their LGBTQ identity, who rejected anything that wasn't their LGBTQ identity, wasn't what it meant to be gay. And that I had been spending the past 4 years of my life trying to fit into a community that rejects conformity. Because I realized that gay people, just as books, are more than just a sum of words. Now, my problem was that I let myself become someone by whom it was expected that I was willing and able to answer every and any question that people threw at me, even the more personal ones. And I was often asked on occasion if scissoring is actually a thing. It's not. But when they do it with an oddly suggestive look in their face that makes you think that it was intended more personally than they worded it, it is harmful. Being an educator, however, could get exhausting at times, and often felt like I was being forced to bear parts of my identity that were uncomfortable and private. And while I'm sure some of you are thinking that sharing details about your sex life is as easy as talking about the weather or what you had for dinner last night, I invite you to consider what it's like to be asked and demanded of this information in a public setting, a place where you have no control, and have not given the consent, rather than in a setting where you volunteer this information willingly. And, okay, activity time. I'd like you all to think about the last position you had sex in. Okay? You got it? All right, time to share. I'm not going to make you do that. But that fear that you felt, that drop in your stomach, that you felt when you thought you might have to share this information with someone, is the fear that I feel every day, and whenever this is asked of me. Now, I'd also like you to consider what it'd be like to turn to your person on your left or your right and ask them the same question. Maybe the person behind you if you're sitting next to your significant other. Or while you're at it, ask them what their favorite sex toy is. Uncomfortable, right? And this really solidifies the point that it's uncomfortable to ask these questions of people because it is invasive, because it is damaging. Now, I'd like to pose a question to all those who have ever been guilty of this blind and insatiable curiosity. Why did you feel at the time that asking these questions of gay people about their sex lives wasn't intrusive? Often I think it stems from a genuine lack of understanding of queer sex, not from ignorance or bigotry. But I might not understand the inner workings of heterosexual intercourse. That doesn't give me the right to ask you how you personally, heterosexual person, have sex. And while it's extremely important to be educating people on queer issues, it is not the job of every queer person to be the curriculum by which those issues are taught. Because in some sense, I think it removes us of our humanity. The key here, though, is education. A few weeks ago, myself and the rest of the North Toronto Gay Straight Alliance met with the phys ed department to help reshape their new sex ed curriculum. And as I'm sure most of you know, Ontario Ministry of Education recently revamped their sex ed curriculum to feature more inclusive topics, such as consent and gender identity. But the grade 9s that were coming into this curriculum this year were left in an interesting standpoint because they had only ever experienced the curriculum of the past, meaning that their big book of gay knowledge was relatively empty. And this made me realize that the Ministry of Education and that education systems all over the world were not properly equipping their teachers and their schools to be educators on this topic, and that we need vast reforms within the education system, because it is not my job to be the health educator for this school. It is, however, the teachers. Now, bear in mind, I didn't mind helping revamp this curriculum. I actually quite enjoyed it, because it gave me the chance to to address topics in the LGBTQ community that were controversial in a way that wasn't private or invasive of my identity. Because those questions, the questions that move the conversation forward into new ideas and new topics, are the questions that I want to be answering. But when I was revamping this curriculum, I realized that the queer knowledge that I had come to cherish so much was not common knowledge to all, a fact that I kind of rejected when I threw myself completely into this community. And this pulled me towards a world where there is systemic discrimination that enforces the idea that being gay and educating about being gay is A, not necessary, and B, not important. And this came like a kick in the face that pulled me into a situation where the identities of myself and those around me were continuing to be oppressed. And even if we continue to deny the idea that so many people in this community still believe that being gay is wrong and that we should be continuing to oppress people for their sexuality, we are subtly oppressing these people systemically through a lack of education. Because in this case, silence absolutely does speak louder than words. The silence is saying that we don't think your experiences, your struggles, your human struggles and experiences are worth teaching our youth about. And while it's great that the world is becoming so much more accepting of LGBTQ identities, we see this every day. We see this with companies and musicians refusing to perform and do business in states that have passed anti-gay laws. We see this with the legalization of gay marriage, with new rights for transgender people to ease in their transition and their use of the bathroom of their choice. We see progress. But the next goal, and I think the next thing that my community will have to suffer through, and the next issue that my generation of queer youth will have to face, is to explain to people that gay people, queer people, are people who want to live the same lives, to do the same things, have the same aspirations and goals, experiences, and that above all, queer people are two people.